Hi everybody, welcome to Do You Believe on ParanormalZoneTV. I want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight. And those who are new to the show, if you would please subscribe, I'd really appreciate it. And please don't forget to give the show a like. Now tonight I have an awesome guest. I'm really excited about this. I have Keith Raml, who is an award-winning author and screenwriter. And tonight we are going to be talking about one of his many books, The Deviltry, and I'm really excited to have him on the show tonight. So with that, everyone, let's bring on Keith. Hey, Keith.
Hello, Noreen. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Poor Keith had a problem with Skype, but thank God we've got the phone, so everything's going to be cool. So Keith, would you please tell the viewers a little bit more about yourself?
I released my first novel in 2011 called The Cursed Man. It took me approximately about 5 years to write. I got picked up by Sunbury Press, which is a traditional publisher, and it was released March 2011, and then I started talking to a producer in October of 2011 about bringing it to the big screen, and 5 years later, here we are. I'm about 15 books in now, and I'm getting ready to release my first novel with Jim Perry, the producer, director, brain behind the whole operation, Halloween Night in California.
Halloween Night, is it a nonfiction or fiction?
It is well, all of my stuff is based off of true events. So anything that I garner as fiction, it actually is true events, but I twist it in such ways that I turn it into fiction to hide the people that are involved in the story.
Oh, I'll have to check that one out after the show. I need to contact you about that book. All right, so Keith, tell us about The Deviltry.
Well, The Deviltry is something that I stumbled upon accidentally. Somebody invited me to go to the Deviltry, and I had lived in Port St. Lucie at the time for about 10 years. I'd never heard of the Deviltry. Port St. Lucie here is on the Treasure Coast here in Florida, so we're on the East Coast, kind of like right in the middle of Florida, but again on the coast, over by the water there. And there's this tree called the Deviltry. So this person invited me. I said, "What is it?" They said, "You've never heard of the Deviltry?" I'm like, "No, I've never heard of the Deviltry." So curiosity got me, and I started looking it up. And we made plans to go and see the tree. The plans fell through, and I ended up going by myself. And upon my first impression of this absolutely massive 150-year-plus oak tree that's just enormous, once I first arrived on the scene and saw this thing and saw how the legend ties into it, and you know what the serial killer, his name was Gerard Schaefer, what he had done there, and the alleged things that happened around the tree, I saw it all. It was all right there in front of me. So I became a frequent visitor of the tree.
Okay, what do you mean? Wait a minute. What do you mean you saw it all?
Well, I'll explain that as I get along into the story here on exactly what happened, because the Deviltry is not only steeped in legend, it's also has some pretty frightening facts that surround it. Okay. So it's a tree that's mixed with a lot of information. It's really an interesting place. It's inside of a park. Well, just outside of a public park. And you wouldn't even know that the tree was there unless you were purposely looking for it, and you knew to get outside of the park and continue down. A canal would be on your right, which is it's a slow moving body of water, and on your left it's a very thick foresty area, and there's a break in the trees, and it's this almost kind of like this tunnel-like entrance, and you go down into it, and then as it curves around, you see this massive tree, which is the Deviltry, and you can tell the Deviltry because A, it has scarring on it, meaning people had chopped into the bark. B, there's a big cement patch in it. Yeah. There's a low missing branch, and there's burn marks all over the tree.
Yeah, I'm showing.
But that's I don't want to jump too far ahead. I'd actually like to start on who Gerard John Schaefer was.
Oh, sure, yeah.
So people can get an understanding of how in-depth and how interesting that this thing is.
Absolutely, and I'm showing pictures of him and the tree and whatever as you talk, so please go ahead.
All right, so Schaefer, I'll refer to him as Schaefer from this point forward, I guess. He was born in Wisconsin, and he was born in 1946. He was raised in Georgia until 1960, and he was 49 years old in 1995 when he passed away. I use passed away as a proper term, but he was killed. He was stabbed to death. He was mostly known as the killer cop. So I want to kind of touch a little bit on his childhood. Mm-hmm. He was the eldest of 3 children, and he was raised Catholic. Schaefer always said that he felt like he was the illegitimate child of a forced marriage because his father favored his sister, and his father was also a well-known womanizer. Mm-hmm. When he was a teen, his family relocated to Fort Lauderdale, and his parents divorced soon after that. That's when Schaefer started stealing women's underwear, fantasizing about dying, and he even started tying himself to trees. I'm not really sure what his obsession was with the trees, but at this particular age, when he was right around, I would say 14, is when he really started making like connections to trees and tying up and doing some really bizarre things. He was a peeping Tom, and he loved to spy on his neighbor girl that lived right next to him. Of course, he killed animals, but he purposely hunted ones that couldn't be consumed, so he did it for the thrill of the kill. At age 14, he did have a girlfriend for 3 years. They broke up, and they both admitted that they often role-played rape scenarios. He would rip her clothes off, and any other thing that required one to rape, they would kind of act it out as a fantasy between the two of them. He cross-dressed, and although he used it as an excuse to try to get out of going to Vietnam, I think it was a bigger part of his identity crisis. And the reason why I say that is because if you back up to where I said that his father favored his sisters, I believe that he started cross-dressing to try to get approval in some kind of bizarre way of his father. But he's also known, Schaefer, the serial killer, not his father, but the serial killer himself, he's also known to despise women. Okay, so that is a summation of my own, that the reason why he was cross-dressing was because he was trying to become what he hated, yet it's just this weird fantasy that he had and he often played out. In 1967, he earned a degree in business administration, and then in 68, he enrolled in Florida Atlantic University to get his teacher's license, and then held a brief teaching job in Plantation High School. He was fired for inappropriate behavior, and they also cited that he was trying to push his personal views on the students as well. In 1968, he married but was divorced in 70. His wife cited cruelty as the reason for the split in the marriage. He again married in 1971, and he wanted to become a police officer. Although the psychologist test that he took, he failed it, he was still hired. But he was fired not too long for using personal information on female offenders to try and get dates. So anybody that he wrote tickets for, he was at that point then contacting them afterwards to try and get dates from them. So he was quite interesting in the way that now he started this whole thing going on here. He got fired for doing that, and then he moved to Martin County, and then again became a sheriff's deputy. In 1972, Schaefer pulled off his first known murder attempt, and he used his authority as a police officer to convince 2 female hitchhikers named Pamela Wells and Nancy Trotter. They were at the ages of 17 and 18, and they were hitchhiking. And he said that it was illegal to hitchhike, which it was not. And he drove them to a halfway house where they lived, and he promised to drive them to the beach the next day. Now, keep this little scenario that I just gave you in point. as this is a conflicting story, again, where this is where the legend all starts to tie in, and who was buried at the tree and so on and so forth, because it is believed that he didn't pick them up the next day, that he took them directly to a swamp, and he took them there at gunpoint. He tied them both to a tree and threatened to sell them into prostitution. While he was doing this, he had gotten a call on his police radio, and he had to leave them. And while he was gone, the girls had managed to break free, and believe it or not, they ran to the closest precinct, which so happened to be the precinct that Schaefer worked out of. Irony.
Yes.
So when Schaefer returned to the tree and found that they had escaped, he called his boss, which his name was Sheriff Crowder, and he said, quote, "I've done something foolish. You're going to be mad at me." Schaefer defended his actions by telling Crowder that he was merely trying to teach the girls that hitchhiking was an unsafe means of travel, so he was trying to wiggle his way out of it. But Crowder fired him, and they arrested him for unlawful imprisonment and aggravated assault. Schaefer made a plea bargain, and he was sentenced to a year in prison with the possibility of being released in 6 months, but he posted bail after 2 months, and then he abducted two more female hitchhikers. Their names were Susan Place, she was 17, and Georgia Jessup, which is the age of 16. He killed them in the same way that he intended to kill his first captives, Wells and Trotter, the two that escaped, and went to the precinct. So he did end up actually successfully killing Place and Jessup. And due to the similarities of the crimes that he committed against Wells and Trotter to the evidence of Place and Jessup, the police obtained a search warrant to search his mother's house, where his mother, himself, and his wife had lived.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Keith, he not just murdered them, but can you tell the viewers exactly what he did to them?
Well, he loved to torment his victims, and he is known to take not one. He didn't like one. He didn't like one victim. He liked two, because he always felt that it was more of a high, and it was more challenging. And then, as he says, it's so much more rewarding to take two instead of one. And he's known for asking questions of other serial killers, such as, "I killed a pregnant woman, does that count as one or two?" So he was really bizarre and twisted in his thinking. So when they caught him and he went to jail, well, first I need to tell you what they found in his house, and then I'll get on to some of his weird and bizarre behaviors, as well as what you're asking me as far as, the ways that he would kill and the things that he would do.
And what
They found some stories that were written of the killing nature. Of course, he would kind of describe his own craziness down, as most crazy people do. It was, of course, described as being very disturbing by FBI and local authorities and such like that. They found jewelry, clothing, diaries, passports, driver's license, even teeth from victims. He actually claimed that all of these items were planted by another person in the house, a roommate. And of course, this man was proven innocent, and that his claims were untrue, meaning Schaefer's claims were untrue. Here is where I find something to be quite interesting. His victims were always women. It was either one, and he preferred two. But despite the massive amount of evidence against him, he was only tried for the murders of Place and Jessup. He was sentenced to life in prison, and because of that, no charges were pursued, because they felt that it was enough to keep him behind bars forever. Authorities stated that he was tied to around 30 missing women and girls. And I find this a little bit to be disturbing, because what about all of these missing victims and families that went without closure of knowing what happened to their loved ones? Yeah. So, this is a part of the case that really bothers me, is that they only went after him for the two murders, and it was just so much more that this man did. I mean, 30 cases plus. I'm actually going to get into a little things here so that the listeners can even understand on how sick and twisted this man was. a lot of people has never even heard. They haven't even heard of him. They're used to names like Dahmer and the Son of Sam, and all the atypical serial killers. But Gerard John Schaefer, nobody's really heard of him. But he was probably one of the meanest serial killers that we had. And they said that he actually had everything mentally wrong with him that a serial killer can have. So his wife had visited him one time in jail, and she served him divorce papers at that time. And even though Schaefer wasn't liked in prison, of course, with having been a deputy and stuff and many other things, he did befriend serial killer Ted Bundy and Otis Toole.
No.
Otis Toole. Now, I want to let the listeners know, because there's a little tie-in here.
Yes.
Otis Toole was the suspect murder of Adam Walsh, the fame of John Walsh from America's Most Wanted. It was believed that Otis Toole had killed him.
Yes.
And it actually satisfied John Walsh that Otis did actually indeed kill his son. They actually also place, it's in a bizarre twist. I'm getting a little bit off the deviltry here, but it's really interesting, all this stuff that goes kind of around Schaefer and around the deviltry and stuff, that Jeffrey Dahmer actually was in the area when Adam Walsh was abducted as well. So they suspected that it was either Otis or Dahmer.
No way.
Yeah, and then on a deathbed confession, Otis Toole confessed that he had done it, and then case is closed at this point. And like I said, John Walsh accepted and believes that it was Otis Toole who killed his son Adam. Vincent Rivera was his cellmate, and he's the one that stabbed Schaefer to death in 1995. He was stabbed over 40 times. So I think his roommate didn't like him and really didn't have much to lose anyway, because he was serving consecutive life sentences as well. Schaefer is known to have killed 2, which is what we spoke about before. But it is believed that he has killed 35 plus, and I want to give people perspective of that. It is believed that he's killed 35 plus. He died with a plethora of information in his head that he refused to give out. He would kind of play games a little bit. He was notorious for kind of saying something and then recanting, and then he would, say something else, and then he would sue the press because they called him fat, and he was just like this real weird guy. So again, he killed in excess, that they believe, in 35 plus. O'Toole killed 6 plus. Jeffrey Dahmer killed 17. So that puts this evil into perspective on what this guy was that was walking around with a badge.
Well, then how come he's not that well known?
You know something? That's a big question of mine, and there's an FBI profiler that called him one of the most evil men, one of the most evil serial killers that have walked this earth. I mean, he's pretty bad. I mean, he did some pretty nasty things. So I don't want to get too graphic, but he did some really nasty things.
Oh, well, no, that's fine, because I had read that his pleasure was torturing. He did horrible things to his victims, and the reason he wanted to was because it was like a torture for the 2 of them. Which one of you were going to go first? He loved to do that.
Absolutely. He was known to take this, this knife and kind of bounce it back and forth. And when I say bounce, I mean swing it in his hand, kind of put it in front of one and say, why shouldn't I kill you first instead of your friend? And he would kind of play with them and make them beg and plead to kill their friend and give him reasons why he should kill them first, hoping that they would live. But of course, you're in front of a sick man that's got you bound, and he's not going to let you go. So he would just do it to absolutely soak up your fear. And that's one of the motivators behind the legend. It's believed that Schaefer's evil actually seeped into the tree, and so did the fear of his victims. Oh. So it is definitely a notorious haunted place, and I'm actually going to get into how I believe that and why. And it's not necessarily my own experiences, which I did have, and I'll touch briefly on that.
Keith, can I ask you one question?
Yes, absolutely.
So the tree's history, haunted history, starts in the 70s. Was there anything connected to it before the 70s?
There was things connected to the area before the 70s, yes. There are ruins behind the tree. And when I say ruins, there's husks of cinder block buildings, and a lot of people don't know that they're back there. But they're back there, and nature has overgrown and taken them. They're covered with moss. The investigations that I have done, meaning speaking to people, having my ear to the ground and speaking to people, I actually spoke to an older gentleman that works in the park and rec, and he said that these buildings were actually a part of a boys club, but back then they didn't really have boys club. So that's where these shells from these buildings are. And there's really hardly any walls left. I think there's maybe a corner that's going to be probably about 4 feet high, and then the rest are just barely sticking out of the ground. And I do have a Facebook Devil Tree page. I think it says Port St. Lucie Devil Tree. They could look it up that way. And I posted some pictures that local paranormal team gave me. It shows some orbs, and then it also a young lady sent me a picture of a face in the tree. I have seen a demonic face through a picture. That picture was not given to me, unfortunately. Some of it's been pretty compelling. The orb, to me, I've been into the paranormal for a very long time. I'm a huge fan of Ghost Adventures. I believe those guys are the innovators, and I know Ghost Hunter started it all, but I think that Ghost Adventures, Zach Bagans, is really brilliant in the way that he investigates and stuff, and he has a very intellectual mind, and that's how I kind of go there when I approach things. I'm quite hard to scare, so when I go there and I hear noises, I don't really run.
May I ask you another question? Have you had
Sure.
have you had experiences around the tree?
I have. I've had one. And it has to do with an owl. And it's the most bizarre thing, because I went to Port St. Lucie Comic-Con last year, and because of the size of the crowd that was there, they're required to hire local law enforcement to make sure that everybody's behaving. When things simmered down around my table, and I am attending Comic-Con again this year in Port St. Lucie. It's coming up again. Every single sheriff's deputy made it their business to come and talk to me. Every single one. And I'm talking people from 5 feet tall females to 6 feet plus men that I had to stand on my toes to even look at his chin. And they're all telling me about their experiences. But there was this one particular gentleman that told me about, and I don't know what he was, Hispanic of some sort, I'm not really sure, and he had gotten a call to the Devil Tree, and I'm going to give a very abbreviated, a quick version of this. He went to the Devil Tree on a call, got out of his car, he heard an owl. It's in the middle of the day. That's a nocturnal creature. You don't really hear them. Right. So he's making his way to the Devil Tree. He gets to the Devil Tree, and this whole entire time, he's hearing this owl. And he's radioing his other police officer friends that are on, patrol, and he's going, guys, cut it out, stop messing around, you're really freaking me out, cut it out. And they're all radioing him, and they're saying, it's not us, we're not doing anything, it's not us. And he said, as sure as the day is long, that here's this friggin' owl flying over his head, and he freaks out, and he's, and he says, and I'm trained not to scare. And he goes, and I'm running out of there. I get into my car, and this gentleman looks at me in the eyes, and he says, and I called my mom. Oh. He's a police officer. I called my mom, and his mom says, you better start doing Hail Marys and all sorts of things, because an owl is a bad omen. To have an owl show up, in their beliefs, it's a bad omen, and you could actually look that up online and find that there are certain cultures that believe that the presence of an owl is a presence of something evil or something bad to come, an omen to come. And the reason why I told that particular story is because I had the same experience of an owl hooting at me. And it was really, really weird, because I hooted at the owl back, and the thing would answer me.
No.
And it was
way.
so weird. So to me, it was one of two things. Because I like to look at things and think about it after it happens. Intellectually, it could have been an owl that was answering me back, or possibly it could have been somebody in the forest that was coming after hours to visit the tree, because it was getting late and it was time to get out of the park because they don't want you there after sunset. So the experience was certainly something that I went to investigate further, but I didn't, because the person that I was with didn't want to. They were scared. So I wanted to go, they did not, so I respected their wishes and I took them out of there. Which, by the way, I can navigate in and out of there very, very well. I just so happened to get lost in there that night and I couldn't find my way out, which was really, really weird, because it was just a very weird night with that. So, do you mind if I jump back on?
Oh, yes, please. I was just going to ask you to go back to that.
Okay, yeah. So I want to jump back on to after a cellmate stabbed him, and the authorities believe that he's killed 35 plus, and I've given the examples of O'Toole and Dahmer on how many they've killed. It's under the impression that Place and Jessup might not have been his last killings. This is a contradiction. There's two 14-year-old girls named Mary Briscolina and Elsie Farmer. They vanished while they were hitchhiking, just 2 weeks after Place and Jessup were murdered. But their bodies were later recovered, and jewelry belonging to one of them, as well as one at the tree, tied Schaefer to the victims. Okay, so all that stuff that they found there, the licenses, the passports, the teeth, and all this other stuff, tied him. But it's said that Place and Jessup were buried at the tree, although others claim that it might have been Briscolina and Farmer. I think it's Place and Jessup. And the reason why I say that is because there's a reporter named Scott Glover and Jamie Abdo that did a article on the Schaefer killings, and they said the bodies of Briscolina and Farmer were actually found in a grave in Plantation. And I need to reiterate that Schaefer taught in Plantation, so it's important for people to know that because there's a tie there. So he was there. There's no question about it. He's also suspected to being tied to murders in West Virginia, Michigan, and as well as Pennsylvania.
Oh, my God.
Can I give you his exact quote on what he would talk about with his killing? His exact quote is, quote, "Doing doubles is far more difficult than doing singles. But on the other hand, it also puts one in a position to have twice the much fun."
Right.
So that is how he was named the Killer Deputy. And that's where his reign of terror ended, because he was put into jail, and as I mentioned before, he was stabbed to death over 40 times. So a nice, lovely ending for such a kind, warm, loving man.
Absolutely.
So then we get into the legend, and the bodies were discovered by local fishermen. We know that. But what the legend
but the
says
viewers don't
is
know that. But the viewers don't know that. How?
Oh, okay. So they because it's called the C-24 Canal, and there's a boat ramp there now currently. People fish off of it. There's this little tiny pier. I think maybe tops 4 or 5 guys can fish off of that. If they didn't, they'd probably get their lines tangled. It's not a very, very big fishing pier. But local fishermen ended up finding the bodies at the tree because of the bones coming through, and they were found. It is said that they were back there looking for earthworms and what have you, anything that they could use as bait to catch some fish. The devil tree actually has wounds all over it. It has chop marks from axes. It has burn marks. It has been filled with spray foams in holes. There's holes all over the tree that's been filled with a spray foam and then painted to the color of the tree, or attempted to be painted to the color of the tree. There's also, let me stick on this for a second from the wounds. They tried to Legend has it that they tried to cut down the tree via axe. The axe couldn't penetrate the hide of the tree. You absolutely see on the tree wounds from an axe. There's no question about it. It's on the tree. You could see it. They said that the tree just kept thwarting blows. They tried to cut it down with a two-man saw. That's that really long saw where one guy is on one end, the other guy is on the other end, and they heave-ho, and they try to cut it down. But the teeth on this sounds so outlandish and outrageous, but this is the legend, that the teeth actually sheared off of the saw, and they couldn't cut the tree down. They tried to cut it down with chainsaws. The chainsaws wouldn't start. People got freaked out and left. So the tree definitely bears all the resemblances of what the legend says. It also has a huge cement patch right in the middle, and I believe I sent you a picture of the cement patch.
Yeah, I've got it.
The cement patch is approximately the size of a male torso. There's two different versions that I've heard of what that cement patch represents or what may be behind it. One would be satanic etchings, because it is known and told to me also by the police officers currently that, yes, there is satanic activity that does go on at the Deviltree. There's no question about it that it's still currently going on. Okay, another theory is also that he tried to actually hollow out the tree to stuff the bodies inside the tree.
Oh, no. Really?
Yes, so I'm not really sure which one. I'm kind of leaning towards the etchings maybe, because to hollow out a tree, this tree is enormous. You stand underneath it, it overtakes this area of the forest. I mean, it's just huge, gnarly, crooked limbs. This thing is just massive tree, massive. But it's beautiful during the day. You look at this tree, and I think I sent you a picture of it during the day.
I have it.
When I went to the tree, and I snapped that picture as I was approaching it. A disembodied voice has been caught, where the voice has been caught saying whore, and it's like I said and mentioned before, it's believed that that's Schaefer's presence around the tree, because he's known to hate and despise women, and that's why his victims were always women. And I believe it reverts back to his childhood with his jealousy over his sister from his father. He also did a compiling of writings, which was put together in a book called Killer Fiction. It was absolutely a commercial failure. It flopped. It didn't do anything. It does have a cult following, this book. I think it's semi-hard to get. But I know it's out there. I looked it up. It's on Amazon and stuff like that.
Didn't he do sketches too while he was in jail?
He did do sketches.
I couldn't show them because they were X-rated.
Yeah, everything that he did he was very, very morbid. He was a very morbid man, and just, all of his fantasies, hanging, disemboweling, torment. I mean, there'd be pictures of, like tormented faces, and just, he was just really off the charts as far as nut jobs go. And oddly enough, his high school girlfriend, Sandra London, she's the one that compiled Schaefer's writings into this book and released it. And it's interesting to know that they were briefly engaged in 1991, and in a bizarre twist, Sandra London had broken off their engagement to marry a man named Danny Rawling. And if anybody doesn't know who Danny Rawling is, he's the Gainesville Ripper.
No way!
Yes. And he killed, again, and this is just comparison, I'm not minimizing these victims of these other serial killers, he killed 8. Again, Schaefer 35 plus. Why people don't know more about this Schaefer case, and I know there's a lot of confusion around it, and that to me is what legends are all about. Legends become there to absolutely confuse you, because you don't know what the truth is half the time, because somebody's reporting this, and then you're reading the same thing, and they're reporting something completely different. So, somewhere it's always like, this one's telling the truth, and maybe that one's telling the truth, but somewhere in the middle is the absolute truth. And I've been trying to find it, and I don't know how much of it I found, but I believe that I found a lot of truth. And I know that this guy was absolutely nuts. So, people here in PSL, Port St. Lucie, are very passionate about the tree. And I need to tell you that they're very, very protective of it, because my life was threatened over it one time. Somebody found out that I had written a book about the tree, and they threatened to kill me.
No way.
Yes. And I also had a pastor that was telling me that I was, no good, and I was dancing with the devil in this whole 9 yards because I had done this investigation and had written this book. So I went round and round with a pastor online, and most of my friends said, this guy's unhinged too, so just don't even engage with him. And the guy that threatened to kill me eventually apologized to me, and he's cited to me as saying, and I can say, quote unquote, he told me, you better leave the tree alone because it is my tree. I go there, I take my Ouija board there, and the things that are there are mine, and you're not to touch them. And I'm like,
God.
and I'm going, this guy's absolutely crazy too. I'm like, oh my God, I'm digging out the crazies here. So yeah, I've been threatened. Absolutely.
Oh my God.
I've had a paranormal team share some of their evidence with me, which I stated earlier, and I did post it on the Facebook page. I might have sent, I don't think I did. I don't think I sent you any of the orbs or anything, because they gave me permission to post it, so I didn't send it to you. They can look for the Facebook Devil Tree and find it there, and just click on the photos, and they'll see a couple of orbs, and they'll see the demon face up in the tree.
Wow.
When I spoke to this paranormal team, they wouldn't go on record on their experiences on who they were. Because one gentleman, I can give you an example, his father had become very, very ill. And he believes that his time around the tree caused and brought negativity into his life. He was getting angry for no reason. He was fighting with people for no reason.
That's an attachment.
People within the paranormal team were fighting. And one of the things that, and a lot of people that are into the paranormal, and they listen to Zach Bagans, he tells you that you don't really kind of mess around with demons. If you're going to call them out, you better be careful, because you don't know what you're inviting into your life. And this is a prime example of me literally meeting with a gentleman at a park as I'm doing my investigation to write this book, meeting with this gentleman and him looking at me, big man, looking at me with glassy eyes, and he says, I can't even go there, Keith, because it's not a place to be. He says, my parent is sick and possibly dying because of what I invited into my life and into my home. Mm-hmm. So he believes, in his heart of hearts, me looking into this man's eyes, he believes that him going to this tree and taunting and doing all the things that he could to try and quote-unquote capture the evidence gave him an attachment that he can't get rid of. Right. And he believes that he still has it because he sees things. He says that he sees things around his house. That paranormal team is no longer together, although I do speak to some of the members in there every once in a while, and I try to get some of their evidence. But they're protective of it, and I understand why, because there's a lot of personal things going on with them that they believe is tied to going to the Devil Tree and taunting and, doing the things, whatever it is that paranormal teams do to try to get the evidence. Me personally, when I go there, I don't taunt. I go there and I sit, I listen, I do ask questions. I don't invite things into my life because I feel that, that is a doorway that I don't want to open up, and I do believe that there is a doorway there because of the satanic activity that goes on there. There was a priest that did a cleansing of the tree. He planted a cross there. The next day the cross was mangled, busted up, and discarded. I believe that he actually performed an exorcism at the tree, and that's not legend, that's a fact, that there was an exorcism performed at the tree, and a cross was planted there, and it was the cross was upturned, and well be it by somebody that was practicing in the dark arts or somebody that just didn't want it there, what have you.
Now, Keith, the other victims that he is connected to 30 plus murders. Now,
Yes.
his MO is to torture, mutilate, and rape too, I believe.
Yes.
And that's what
And
he.
he was also just. Pardon me for interrupting.
Uh-huh.
He was also into digging up the bodies and having his way with them afterwards.
Exactly.
After they started to decompose.
Yeah. Yeah, I read
and I believe that he had a tactic of actually disemboweling them because it would slow down the decomposition, so that way he can go back to the bodies and pillage them more often.
Oh, I didn't.
So he would slow down the process of decaying by removing all the, it's called putrefaction, and he would slow that down by removing specific organs and stuff like that, it is said. I don't have proof of that. Again, these are things that I've just come across speaking to people, interviewing people, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and that I also read that. So how soon after he killed these two young girls, how soon were they found after they were killed?
They were found. I believe it was approximately 6 months later.
6 months? Oh my God!
Yeah,
well,
6 months later.
So,
and that's why they say that the other two victims that I said that were found at Plantation, he had other time to kill. So it is. I'm under the impression that he went on a rampage at that point. And that's where he started really amping up and doing his things, because he knew his days and time was numbered,
right.
that he was caught. So I think that he's just started to go absolutely crazy and kill carelessly, and just he was taking tokens and stuff. So
then the other two that he killed, was it the same MO? Did he use the same O each time? MO?
Yes.
Oh, he did. So that's how they're tying him into those other 30 plus murders.
Yes, they tied him from the MO, as well as the things that he would say while he was in prison, and then he would recant. But he would say things that only somebody that was involved in killings would know. And he would actually lead them to find bodies, but he died. He would play games with authorities, and he died with, like I said, way when we first started talking, he died with a lot of information in his head on where he put these bodies. And they're believed to be spread all over. He killed on Hutchinson Island. He was all over the place, and he was killing. So he was in other states. He was here all over the Treasure Coast in Florida. Not just, guy was crazy. I mean, I just look at what this guy did, and I just look at, how do they take somebody that, fails a psych test and give him a badge? And then he gets fired as being, you could even go into how he was fired from, being a teacher and pushing his point of views, and just the schooling system didn't want him in. They knew something was wrong, and yet he goes to Martin County and gets hired as a sheriff's deputy again. He made his way back up to the ranks and became a deputy again.
That's crazy.
And that's ultimately...
That's insane. That's insane.
Yeah, it is. And ultimately his dream of being a deputy and having all of this control over people, because that's what that obviously is at this point when you're looking at this guy, that was ultimately his demise, and that's what got him caught, because if those two did not escape capture, who knows how long he would have gone. And it's so ironic, and it's just, they run to the precinct that he works out of. His ex-fiance marries another serial killer. It's just so bizarre, these things that he did. He was in touch with other serial killers, exchanging stories. He was under close watch in the prisons, and he would write notes to other prisoners. It was the weirdest thing. He would write notes to other prisoners as if she was a young girl, and mail it to them.
Oh my God.
So he was pretending to be these girls that like these guys in prison, and he was doing all these weird things. So he was just like I said, I mean, he failed the psych test. I mean, this guy, he pinned the needle like crazy. But he was very, very smart too, because, I mean, look at how long he got away with it.
Yeah, how many years was it?
He killed, I think it was about 4 years the killings went on. It stretched on about a 4-year period that they know about, because they also believe that he was doing things when he was younger. Because there's all sorts of missing people around that they don't really know, and they assume. So it's hard to sit there and say that, he started killing after, after his fantasies at the age of 14, 15, 16, tying himself to the tree, wishing himself that he was dead, and acting out these crazy things with his girlfriend, these rape scenes, and then, right from there, boom, I think he went right into it.
Oh my
because
God.
he was, I don't know how much at bay when you have that in you, how much you can keep that aside and go on with your life as a normal person. Because he was clearly very, very disturbed.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. Wow, what a story. I'm surprised nobody's made a movie out of his story.
they haven't made, I don't think they made movies, but they've done documentaries, like where they profile serial killers and stuff. And he really hasn't had his, he had his 2 minutes of fame, but he really hasn't had the exposure like, Dahmer. People are like, oh my God, he ate people. He's a cannibal. Well, look at what Schaefer did. I mean,
I know.
He was worse. He did it to 5 times the people that Dahmer did it to. And he was doing all sorts of bizarre things. There's the ruins behind the Devil Tree that I spoke about earlier. Part of the legend says that he was taking people to these walls that they weren't so crumbled at the time, because you could clearly see now that some of it's been kicked over and vandalized and stuff like that. But it's believed that he was taking people there and not necessarily just at the tree, but also into the ruins, and that he was torturing them there and then dragging them to the tree, as he kind of wore them down and was doing whatever it is that he was doing. So it's assumed also that these ruins are connected to the murders too. So it's not only believed, and also according to the Port St. Lucie police officers and Martin County Sheriff's deputies, it's also believed that the ruins around the tree is haunted as well, not just the tree. Because if you kind of go into the ruins and stuff, it's a little creepy in there.
Mm.
And I wrote a second one called Devil Tree. It's the Devil Tree to the Calling. I wrote a second book.
Yeah, I'm showing
and that deals with the ruins. That deals more with what he was doing with the ruins. And in there, I kind of get a little bit away from the tree, and I focus more on, what other people are saying that he did over at the ruins and stuff like that.
So talk about that then. What was he doing at the ruins?
It's believed that he would, of course, rape, torture, torment, kill, take him to the tree, hang him from the tree. There's only proof that I know of 2 bodies were discovered at the tree. It's the only proof that I know of. But it's believed that he's killed multiple people there, and taken their bodies elsewhere and buried them. But it's believed that right in that particular area there, he liked to frequent that area, and he would he would exhume the bodies, and he would have sex with the bodies.
Mm.
He would slow down the decomposition of the bodies. That shows his intelligence and his intent, which is just absolutely, I wouldn't even know to do that. I only know about this from reading on it, from reading on this guy and going, oh my God, this guy was just, and this is why I am absolutely convinced that the Devil Tree in the area is haunted, because that sort of torment leaves an impression. It's got to leave an impression, because to sit in front of somebody that has a knife and he's saying to you, why shouldn't I kill you first?
Mm-hmm.
Instead of your friend. And now you got to sit there and you got to beg with him and tell him why he should kill your friend. Imagine that fear and that, what sort of stain and residue that leaves behind.
That must have been awful for the victims.
I couldn't imagine it.
No.
And when I go there, I often speak about, I'm here out of respect to the victims. I don't want to disrespect them in any way. or any of their family members and stuff like that. But, I'm very interested in, of course, in what Schaefer did and how he got away with it and why. Why in the world would they stop prosecuting him and looking into these murders after 2? Because that was enough to put him away for life. Mm-hmm. Where is the closure to the other families? Where are all these other bodies?
How are they protecting the tree now in that park?
The tree it's just, you go there and you can kind of see a little bit of people engraving their names in there. I did a little video maybe about a year and a half back on YouTube, where I go to the tree and I show people, a couple engraved their name in there. I don't even remember the name. So-and-so loves this person there. And I said, people, just don't desecrate the tree. It seems that people are more interested in looking at the tree and just kind of being around it rather than vandalizing it. And I hope that remains true because, in the long run, it's a tree. It's got history around it, and it needs to be preserved. I think that's important.
Do you know if anybody's still attempting to destroy the tree?
No. As far as I know, the only thing that I can tell you that I know that is still going on there is satanic activity is still going on there, as well as somebody like myself with the curious mind, your average everyday Joe, that just goes there and they want to see both men and women. I've met people at the tree. I've spoken to them there. Do you feel anything? Some people feel a very strong sense of sadness. I don't. When I go there, I don't feel anything. I've tried. The only experience that I have ever had there was an owl. Mm-hmm. I have seen unexplainable things after my investigation around myself that I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. And I'm writing a book currently right now that's called Sitting Under the Devil Tree, which is where I'm going into the details of Schaefer's murders, and I'm going into how the tree and my investigation around the tree has affected me personally. Wow. Because I didn't just leave that experience of the owl there. I have seen things that I can't explain. And I can tell you, I don't want to get too involved in depth in this, but I have seen demons around me, it sounds so silly me even saying it, but I have seen with my own 2 eyes demons since I've gone visiting this tree. I have pulled away from visiting the tree and it subsided. So I was seeing things that I could not explain, and I'm not talking about seeing things when I wake up and my eyes are blurry in the middle of the night. I'm talking I have had daytime experiences where I have looked at things that I cannot explain what I was looking at.
Oh my God. Have you ever brought a digital voice recorder there with you and just not said a word and just played the recorder?
Yes.
Anything happen?
No. I've also done it with video.
Okay. I'm surprised.
And believe it or not, I've even brought my mother to the tree. My 71-year-old mother. I brought it to the tree just to see what she thought. She's like, the tree is beautiful. I'm like, you feel anything, Ma? She's like, no. And then her and I were actually rummaging through the ruins and some of the pictures of the ruins. I have extensive pictures of the ruins. And in the back of each book, I kind of give the reader how, when you read in the story, I show them through pictures the timeline and, how you can get to the tree and, here's the scarring on the tree, here's the cement patch on the tree. And then again, in the second one, I go into the ruins and I show pictures of the ruins and what it's believed, the corrugated roofing that's all rusted and jagged and sticking out of the ground. It's real dangerous and stuff. People have been back there partying, you could tell. Broken beer bottles all over the place and stuff like that, so people use it as a spot to party and stuff like that. And I know the police do their due diligence to try to keep that at a minimum, especially with the satanic activity that was going on and evidently still does through the threat that I got about a year and a half ago. It seems that a Ouija board is the thing of choice for the people that go there and want to communicate. And I'm not talking about the paranormal team that was there. I'm talking about individuals that go there. I actually had, here is how intense people are involved with this tree. You can't make this stuff up. Comic-Con last year. The book is brand new, just released it. This guy goes, oh my God, the Devil Tree book. He goes, can I tell you something? Now, I warn everybody and tell them, I'm a writer. Anything that you say can and probably be will used in a story at some point. So this man proceeds to tell me, I go there constantly. And I'm asking, how often do you go? He's like, I go 2, 3, 4, 5 days a week sometimes. And this ties into the gentleman that I was speaking to from the Paranormal Society, where he felt that his parent was sick because of the thing.
Yeah.
The tree, and it was doing it to me, the tree has this thing where it keeps inviting you back. For some reason, you can't stop thinking about going there and needing to find out more.
Oh, wow.
So I actually had to make a conscious effort to stop going. I stopped. I had to make a very, very mindful effort to not go there because of the negative things that were starting to happen around me, and again, speaking to people that were all going through this. So I was kind of going, okay, I'm seeing things. I have this desire to constantly go to the tree, which these paranormal team says it just keeps calling you there. And now here's this guy at my table that I'm talking to as I'm doing this book signing, and he says to me, so I go there and I visit, and and he goes, I constantly go, I need to go, and he goes, but I do something really weird. And I'm like, okay, I've heard some pretty far out things there when it comes to this legend and stuff and the things that people do. And this guy absolutely floored me. So he says to me, Keith, I take pieces of bark off the tree and I eat it every time I go.
Oh my God. What does that prove? What is that supposed to do?
He wants to see if he's going to get possessed, or he goes, I want to know if I'm going to get possessed or a disease, or I don't know how healthy that is for you, but I mean, come on. I was like, wow, hold on a second. Let me write that down so I don't forget that one. So I wrote it down, of course, and I was just like, ooh.
We have questions. We have questions for you from the chat room. Okay? All right, so from Jill1217, question, what power could the tree have?
What power?
Yeah.
I believe it's an allure. I believe that it has an allure to it, meaning it has a beauty to it during the day, and as the day starts to go away and the darkness starts to fall, something certainly sinister is there, and I believe that's the answer to that. It has an allure to it. For some reason, I would visit it during the day, and then I started going at dusk, and I actually started staying past my time, where I got in trouble from park workers because you're not supposed to be in there.
Yeah.
And they were not happy with me, and I just kept going back to it. There was no reason for me to keep going back to it, but I kept going time and time and time and time and time again. Now, just as a side note, it normally takes me about maybe a year to 5 years to write a book. I wrote The Devil Tree in 35 days. Now, if that's not obsession, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So 5 years to 35 days, or a year, because I'm a little bit more efficient in my writing now, so I can write it a little quicker.
Are you the only one that has written a book on the Devil Tree, and the Florida Devil Tree?
Yeah, it's the Port St. Lucie Devil Tree.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. And I didn't check to see if there were other books because there's a New Jersey. I believe that other book that's out there. I believe that's about the New Jersey. Yeah, I didn't know there was 2 Devil Trees.
Yeah, there's a Jersey tree that's called the Devil Tree too, and I don't really know too much about that because I'm focusing more on Florida legends and stuff like that. And the only legends that I don't go after is Native American. I don't touch that. I believe that's like a place that I don't belong, so I won't touch that. But I'll look at serial killers and ritualistic killings and satanic stuff, and I'll look at that, and I believe that I'm okay with it. But for some reason, American Indian, I don't touch that. I'm afraid of that.
Now I know you've written some other. Have you written any other books on serial killers?
Not yet, but
okay.
I'm getting ready.
Well, please let me know.
I'm gonna go. I can tell everybody that I'm gonna kind of tie the Schaefer killings into his former woman that he was involved with that ended out going with Danny Rowling. I'm kind of interested in the Sandra London and the Danny Rowling, the Gainesville Ripper. I'm kind of interested in him. There's something here called the Boston House. It's a very haunted site. It doesn't necessarily have to do with serial killer, but it's a very, very haunted location, and I can tell you that I've had probably at this point over 100 requests to write about that. So that's in my log of things that I will eventually get to. So the Boston House is probably the next. It's the Boston House, but it's here in Florida. So that's probably my next endeavor as far as a haunted location that I'm going to do. But again, I'm interested in the Gainesville Ripper. I'm very interested in him.
Oh yeah. My viewers love serial killers and true crime. We all love that. So I'll have to make myself a note to contact you every once in a while to see what you're up to. All right, we have another question for you. April Fagan, has Keith ever experienced anything violent or followed him home after being around the tree?
Yes. I have seen, as I mentioned before, I have seen demons, and it's very specific. I can be very specific and tell you that I've seen it on 3 separate occasions. I've spoken about it to people close to me to get their objective opinion. And I came upon my own conclusion that I needed to stay away from the devil tree and that my exposure to this was starting to affect me personally. So I stopped going. I was sitting down and getting ready to write a 3rd devil tree book, and I stopped. I have a full outline, and I have not touched it. So I could actually probably literally sit down and write this book in, probably a month or 2. But at this point, I'm going to kind of let book 1 and 2 ride themselves and see how people take to it and see how interested they are in me continuing with the legend. And they also have to understand that they say to me, is this fact or fiction? It's a legend. Whenever you say legend, there's fact in there and there's fiction in there. Because there's a fine line between what's the truth and what is not. Again, you have reporters that give you conflicting stories about the 2 women the 2 young ladies that were killed and believed to be exhumed from the tree. But it was not. I mean, it was the other 2. It was Jessup and I have to go back to my notes. It was Place and Jessup.
Yeah.
It wasn't. And I'm very firm in my belief that it was not Mary Briscolona and the Elsie Farmer, because they were found in plantation. So, yes, I have experienced, but the only thing I experienced at the tree was this weird owl thing. Mm-hmm. And then I would hoot back at it, and it would hoot at me. It was almost like talking to me. It was so weird. It was just weird. It was just unexplainable. It doesn't really mean much to me other than, okay, an owl was hooting at me. A police officer tells me the story about an owl. So that and the seeing of demons on 3 separate occasions, and at one time this demon was so crystal clear to me. If I had any artistic talent whatsoever, I could draw a picture. I could still see it to this day in my mind's eye. I could still see it.
Wow.
And it turned its head and it looked right at me, stared right at me, and I looked right at it, and I'm going, oh my God, what am I looking at?
Oh my God. Yeah.
And this was a daytime experience. This was not a nighttime experience, and that's important to know. I've had a dusk experience, I had a daytime experience, and I had a nighttime experience. And one nighttime experience that I had was actually in the place where I lived. I saw something that I can't explain. And again, I go up and I investigate, because somebody shouldn't be walking around the house that I live in. Unless they're my children, So I get up and I'm looking, and there's nothing there, but yet as clear as day, I saw somebody walking around. So
Wow.
I don't have answers for it. All I can say is I've had experiences, and I don't really know how to explain them.
Wow. Stop messing with the tree. Stop
Yeah,
going
you know,
there.
and like I said to the young lady's earlier question, is the tree has an allure. It keeps calling you back. It wants you to go there, and it just sounds so weird and bizarre, but it's true, because listen to the things that I'm saying about the Paranormal Society. The guys that would go there, they would taunt the demons there to try to get them to come out. All these bad things are happening. They're having these inner fightings, these inner turmoil, these steep anger towards each other. They were very aggressive towards each other, yet they would go time and time again, and they would continue investigating the tree, and they weren't putting two and two together. But I had the fortunate information handed to me that I noticed the sign that, heck, I'm going to this tree an awful lot for no reason.
Yeah.
So I identified it, and I stopped, and since then things have cooled its jets around me. So that doesn't mean that I'm not going to go back and pick things up. Every once in a while on the DoubleTree Facebook page, I say, hey, is anybody interested in going? Because some people don't know how to get there, and I love to take people there. I've done it. And every once in a while I'll post that out and see if anybody is interested in going. But again, you go there during the day, it's absolutely beautiful. But as it starts to turn, as that night starts to come, it's a completely different feeling for people there.
Wow. All right, we have another question from Michael Kane. Keith, what the St. Lucie Sheriff Department, who got sent to prison? Was he killed like a... No, see, Michael came in late. Was he killed like a PSI cop and county official? So...
No, actually, I can answer that, because I can elaborate that on a little bit further. He was not liked in prison, but like I said, he was running these schemes of doing these letters and all sorts of things that he was doing, and he was talking to other serial killers. So ultimately what ended up happening to him, he didn't get killed because he was a cop. He got killed because he was not doing the right things, and he was starting to piss the prisoners off. And that's why his cellmate stabbed him to death.
Oh, God. Well, good for him.
You know, and again, acting like he's a young lady through letters, because you got to remember, this is in the 70s.
Yeah.
So he's writing letters, 70s, 80s, and, you know, he's writing letters in 95, I believe he died. What is it? Yeah, he died in 95. So, you know, he didn't have, you know, text messages and stuff. He would write letters as if he was a little girl, and he'd mail it down to the guy down in cell block C, I guess. You know, and say, hey, I think you're cute. So he was just doing some really weird things. And it caught up with him.
Oh my God. All right. Okay, River has a question. Who was the person who named the tree the Devil Tree? How did it get its name?
The Devil Tree's name, I don't have a specific person who called it the Devil Tree. But the Devil Tree, I believe, got the name from the satanic worshiping that was going on there. Not from the actual Schaefer killings, but from the satanic activity that was going on there. That's why they had started calling it the Devil's Tree.
Yeah.
Which had been named after Schaefer had been in prison.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But again, people were doing these pentagrams and bath and all this other stuff, Baphomet and stuff like that. So if people know any sort of Satanistic symbols and stuff like that, they were doing the upside down crosses, and all sorts of other symbols are said to be found there. Again, which is where these cement patches are on the tree.
All right, we have another.
There's actually a place on the bottom of the tree. I can't really make sense of it. There's a hole there. Spray foam was put there, and chicken wire, or better known as, it's hardware cloth, meaning it's that, you know, really firm, thin wire.
Yeah,
and they spray foamed it. I have no idea why. I don't know why.
I'm showing a picture of a hole in the tree, and it's it looks like there's something in it, whether it's cement or what's in there.
Yeah, that's some of it's cement and some of it's spray foam that's painted to the color of the tree. But when you're actually there in person, it's a gray. They painted it gray, so it is certainly different. And there are certainly scorch marks above that big patch that's in the middle of the tree.
Uh-huh.
So the legend also goes into how they tried to cut down the tree. They also tried to burn it down, and it wouldn't burn.
Yeah.
So you can see the burns on the tree. You can actually see the scarring on the charring and the scarring on the actual tree itself all over the bark.
Yeah, and
they said that the flame wouldn't take. The flame would just extinguish, and they couldn't explain why, so they just decided to leave it.
God, that is so weird. All right, we have another question. Nancy Soplavita. Keith, have there been times you've been terrified studying about the devil tree?
I don't know. I don't think that I've ever been terrified. Again, I don't scare easy. Have I been concerned? Yes. I was concerned when I started seeing things, and that's after my initial investigations and stuff were done. So I was able to identify that something wasn't right, and I stepped away. So, and I think I did it at the right time. So that's the simplistic answer to that.
Okay. Let's see. Starry Night. Did you interview any prison guards who might have talked with Schaefer?
I have not interviewed any prison guards that have spoken to Schaefer. The only people that I have interviewed are people that are currently on duty and or people that have investigated a tree via paranormal investigation teams, and I've actually been face to face with the Satanists, and I've interviewed them.
Oh, wow. All right, another question. Joanne Dion wants to know, what do you know about the Killer Sisters?
I don't know anything about Killer Sisters.
Okay.
So I would like that particular person to send me an email off of keithraml.com. Go there and send me some information, because I will start looking at that and get some answers and figure out what that is. But I haven't heard anything about the Killer Sisters. And I don't know if this particular question refers to the devil tree, but I know that there's been sightings of nuns at the tree.
No.
Yes, that there's people that claim to have seen nuns at the tree.
Really? Do you think they were really nuns, Keith, or possibly those entities that have the robes?
I don't know. Amy Main, who's a world-renowned, I don't know if she's a psychic or a sensitive, whatever they call themselves now, shadow people and shapeshifters, and you have all these different types of entities that can, sometimes they take the form of a children to get your trust, or somebody that, that you identify with as being, they won't harm me, they don't mean me any harm. So I don't really know. I've only heard of the sighting of the nuns twice, so I didn't really put that into anything, because two people have told me that.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so I'll sit on that for a little while. And a lot of times, like what I say is, when the Port St. Lucie police officers were coming over to me and telling me, when you hear one story, fine. When you hear a second story, okay. Maybe there's something. When you hear a third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and it keeps going, there's something going on at this tree. This is why I say I am absolutely convinced that this area is absolutely haunted. And I say the area because I want to include the ruins. I don't think it's just the tree. I think it's the ruins around the tree, and I think it's at the tree.
Oh my God.
Because I think of all of the torment of that was done, I believe that it's a residual staining of people's absolute, that's got to be absolutely terrifying. And to to be, somebody jumps out and scares you. Imagine how you're scared with that. Imagine looking down somebody's knife and looking into somebody's eyes that has no compassion or no. I mean, look at the picture of him. The picture I saw. He's just sitting there smiling like he's just having another day.
Oh yeah, here, let me post it again. Yeah.
He's just sitting there like he's having a happy day. He's being arrested for murder.
Oh my God, I feel so horrible for those victims. Oh my God, I can't even. It's horrible.
There's another picture online where he's approaching the court, and he looks like he's getting ready to go out to a nightclub. He's having the time of his life.
Yeah.
I didn't send you that one, but it's out. It's floating around on the internet. That's it's an older picture. While he was appearing in court, some newspaper photographer caught that picture, and it's out there. So you could see as he's approaching his trials and stuff like that, and he was just. Somebody called him. One of the investigators called him fat. I don't know if you read this, and he was like from jail. He's not jail, prison. He's like suing this guy because there was a reporter because he called him fat.
Oh jeez.
And another guy said that he was, a maniac. He was crazy. And then Schaefer says, I'm going to sue this guy too.
Oh my God.
So he would try to sue people. Of course, it never went through.
No,
of course.
Can't sue anybody for that.
So but that was his logic. I killed here. No, I didn't. I killed some other women here. Oh, no, I didn't. And then he wouldn't give details. He would kind of hold on to the information, and he would play with the police that were investigating and kind of sending them a little bit on a goose chase.
Wow.
I buried bodies here. No, I didn't. I buried them over here. No, I didn't.
All right, we have, Momoi Satsuki. If the tree draws you back, like you said earlier, how do you stop going to the tree?
Well, I moved away from the area.
Oh, you did?
I actually moved away from the area. I moved, I was, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know about the tree, as I said in the beginning, and through a Facebook post and an invitation, that's how I discovered the tree, and I discovered that I lived about 10 minutes away from the tree, so I had ready access to the tree at all times. I mean, I could literally jump in my car and be there in 10 minutes.
Wow.
So I ended up moving.
All right, Nicole Jacobs. Have you ever or would you ever investigate where the Salem hangings took place?
Yes. And again, I'm not saying that I'm the bravest person in the world. I think Zach Bagans is a little crazy, and I know I talk about him a lot. I'm a big fan of his, and Aaron Goodwin and all the things that they've done over the years. But I don't scare easy, so I have a very curious mind. So when I see something, I'm kind of like, no, there's got to be an explanation.
All right, Donna Gordon. So where are you getting the number of victims from the 35 plus?
That is through police investigators that were investigating Schaefer at the time. That is their number, 35 plus.
Yeah, I read that as well. Lurch M. What happened, or what did you learn from the Satanist interviews?
That they don't like people around their tree.
I could. Yeah.
And I'm not even talking about, this wasn't the man that threatened me. This was somebody else, that they don't like other people around their tree. They feel that it's theirs, that whatever is lurking around there belongs to them.
Yeah.
So, and they talk about how they call out the devil.
Yeah.
Voices. There's a video online of some paranormal team that went there, and again, capturing the word whore, things like that. So, I just think that they're playing with something that I quite don't understand. So, when they're talking about Ouija boards, that's not something that I would readily stick in my hand.
Do you use,
so they look at this particular place as a possession. It's like it's kind of theirs. That's how it was put to me in so many terms, is like, this is our area. This is our tree.
All right, Tina Yacht, can you ask Keith if any of the demons that he has seen, as any of his family members seen them, and are they at his home?
I am very far separated from my family, and no, they have not experienced any of the demons that I have. I will tell you that I had an experience as a child with a demon. And my brother, who is a harder skeptic than I am, as tough as they come, used to tell me you dream and go back to bed. I used to see things all the time in this particular house. And then there was this one night that he came running into my room, and my brother is this big, tattooed, scary kind of guy, and I'm just quite the opposite. I'm on the smaller side. I'm short. I'm light. And to see his fear and to see him actually experience something at that house that I was staying in as a young, I think I was around 15. My brother's a year older, so he was maybe 16 years old. He saw the same thing I did finally, so it was validation for me at the time. And then I hadn't experienced anything after that until I started visiting the Devil Tree. But nobody else has experienced what I have, because somebody was with me during the time that I saw something, and I asked them if they saw it, and they said no.
Wow.
So I was looking at something that they did not see.
All right, we'll take 2 last questions, and that's it. Spirit Finder 321. Of all serial killers, Keith, why the dire interest?
Probably because it's in my backyard. Literally.
Yeah.
It was in my backyard, and I was so close to it, and I had such... And there's a lot of information out there on Dahmer. There's a lot of information out there on the son of Sam, that his dog was talking to him, and then later on he recanted that was all just made up nonsense. Schaefer is not well known. He's not a well-known serial killer. So again, it was probably the convenience of it being in my backyard, and also there's really nothing out there on him
No.
except for conflicting reports and this one little documentary that was probably, I would say, I don't know, 45 minutes or so on him.
I've never even seen a documentary on him. What channel?
Yeah, it was done. I think it was done through like the History Channel.
Was it just on him?
I'm sorry?
Was it just on him or several serial killers?
Oh, several.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's the thing, is they've never highlighted him. And if you read on the FBI guy that was doing the investigations on him, and I'm sorry, I don't have his name. I don't have his name readily available, but the FBI guy says that Schaefer is the worst of the worst, and he was even named in this show as being one of the worst serial killers out there. So he was like, as far as the ladder goes, he was like on top. He was above Dahmer. He was above the son of Sam. He was, I would probably say the only one that was even close to him was the guy that was throwing the bodies in the back of his pickup and driving back to Florida. I think he was the Green River Killer.
Oh.
I think he's probably the only one that was just as crazy as Schaefer.
Wow.
And believe me, all these guys are nuts. And I find it to be very, very interesting that it's usually always white men. For some reason, I find that so interesting that it's, serial killers are usually white men.
Oh, I never thought about it.
It's just so interesting to me, and I don't know, what it is or what's in the brain, and I don't think that they'll ever know. But there's something in the chemicals that just, it's not lining up.
I'm going to have to check that out. I've never thought about that.
Yeah. If you look, and you may even be able to Google now. I don't have any of my electronics up because I was so disappointed about not being able to get anything going so that I could have this, this live visual feed with you. I think you could look up, percentage of serial killers of being male. White male. I think maybe a listener out there can do it as well, and just look at it. It's just staggering.
My friend Dave Spinks said that it was Robert Ressler.
Okay, the FBI agent?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yep.
Let's see. Two more questions. Michael Caine. Ask Keith if he would you consider investigating St. Augustine?
Yes, that's actually something in my sights. Yes. And if that person lives in St. Augustine, get in touch with me through my website. I do respond all the time.
Yeah, Michael Caine does, and he's always asking us to go to St. Augustine.
I will go. Tell him I will actually meet him, and I will go. I will meet with him. I will go to a haunted location with him. I will start doing what I do to, put together a book. And
oh yeah, Michael knows a lot about. He lives there, and he knows all about the haunted locations. So did you hear that, Michael? Contact Keith. All right, Tina Yash. Ask him if his wife and children have seen the demons at their home, or only he sees them.
Only I have seen them.
Okay. Well, that.
And when I tell you as clear as day, I mean as clear as day. Clear. Seen them 3 times.
Oh my God.
And one time, I'm telling her, it was middle of the day in Florida. Middle of the day, outside. I'm not in my house. I'm outside.
That's insane.
Middle of the day.
Insane. And you weren't scared?
No, again, it was the curiosity of me going, and I'm looking, and I'm trying to figure out what I'm looking at, and as I approach, the thing just kind of moves away, and I'm like, what the frickin' heck is that? And and this thing had a very specific face. If you could look at the ocean, this sounds so freaking bizarre. If you look at the ocean, as the wave starts to come up in the ocean, and it starts to just get that curl, that was its cheeks. Its cheeks were flat, and it swooped up and started to curl around.
Oh.
It had deep-set yellow eyes and a flat nose.
Oh, my God.
I could see this thing as clear. I'm looking, I'm going, what in the frick? Is that somebody in a mask or something? Like, I was just like going, what in the frickin' heck is going on? And I approached it, and it gone.
Now, you said you've seen other demons. Was it the same description?
No.
Different.
Nope. One was a shadow.
A shadow person?
Uh-huh. And another one was curled up in a fetal position on the side of the road.
Oh, my God. Really?
And that was at dusk. And as clear as I'm driving down the street, I'm looking at this thing uncurl and standing and looking at me.
Oh, my.
And I turn to the passenger in the car and I go, did you just see that? And they just said, see what? I said, you didn't just see that demon on the side of the road? And they look at me like I'm nuts.
Okay, now wait a minute. How do you know it was a demon?
It just had the looks. I mean, it just looked extremely sinister to me. If you look at something and it looks, as human, like I guess myself, I would say that I don't have an evil look about me. But when something has, very specific features such as discolored eyes, meaning red eyes.
Okay, now
very sharp features. And they don't have the posture of a human being. It just leads me to believe that it's a demon.
Wow. Did you put any of that in your book, or is that going to be in your next book?
That's actually going to be in the book, Sitting Underneath the Devil Tree. I believe I titled it Sitting Under the Devil Tree. And okay. I'm probably going to release that in, probably about 6 months. I have some other things with my other writings going on right now. So, right now that's taken the front seat to my investigations of the Boston house and some of the other things that people want me to look into. I got to finish up some of these other things that I'm doing.
Okay. I'm going to show them your website, and these books that you have can be purchased at Amazon.com. And Keith's website is keithraml.weebly.com. And Keith?
Yes, or they could put in KeithRaml.com if they want. They don't have to put the Weebly in there. I did get the KeithRaml.com, so they could just throw that in there.
Okay.
And I believe the Deviltree Kindle edition is on a countdown deal. I'm looking at it right now. It's got 4 hours left. It's $4.99, so it's $2 off. It sells for $6.99. 4 hours and 14 minutes. Once that is expired, that's it. Amazon doesn't let me put it on sale again for another year.
Okay, that's awesome. Keith, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. It was such a pleasure to have you on the show and a pleasure to meet you. I'm sorry we couldn't get you up on Skype. I would have loved to have had you.
Maybe next time, I'll be a little bit more prepared next time, and I take responsibility for that because it was my end that I couldn't get connected. Maybe when we do Underneath the Deviltree, we can talk a little bit further, and I can go into further discussions about some of my personal experiences because I just barely touched on it and stuff. And and if anybody has questions, send them to me. Again, the book is written based off of the legend of the Deviltree, so people are going to ask me, is it fact or fiction? You decide. You take the facts, you take the fiction.
Awesome. Yeah, when you write those other books, any more serial killers, I love, that's one of my favorite topics.
Yeah, and I approached the Deviltree a little bit differently, the way that I wrote this book and intertwined fact and fiction. And the reason why I did this is because if you want to learn about Schaefer, just go on Wikipedia. Or just go on, any other, go to any other site, or just go and ask for the records, and you can get the records of what went on around this guy. So I built a world around this whole thing, which is, to me, it's more interesting than just telling the story that I told, because you could read that and sum it up as I did in the back of the book. I got permission to reprint an actual article which sums up the legend in about a page and a half. So instead of that, I created this whole universe and pulled it into today. And I have the readers experiencing this today. So that's the unique part of this, about this read, is you're not in 1970, although the first chapter does take place in 1970. 1972, I believe. But I yank it forward so that way I'm not bogging the story down by transistor radios and all this other stuff that was back in the 70s and stuff.
Keith, thank you again so much for being on the show. It was such a pleasure, and I really enjoyed having you on the show.
I want to thank you, and I want to thank everybody for their questions. And visit KeithRaml.com if you have any questions for me or if you want to contact me.
Thank you, Keith. Good night, honey. Good night. And I'll be in touch with you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Oh my gosh. I hope you all enjoyed the show tonight. I certainly did. I've never heard of the Deviltree, and it was such a pleasure. And a topic I never heard of before. Plus, that serial killer. I have never heard of him before. I had no idea, and he's a horrible man. Horrible. So everybody, I want to thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We had a really big crowd tonight, and I want to thank you so much for joining me tonight. I want to thank my mods. I see Dave Spinks is in the chat room. Hey, Dave. Thank you, Royce Hinman and Annie, sweet Annie. Annie, I know Annie was there as well. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I want to do some shout-outs now. I have a guest next week, and he was on when we were doing the Horsefly Chronicles with Carissa and Phil. Carissa brought a guest on, and his name was Winter Lake. He's a Satanist, and he talks in a weird tongue, and he's a practicing Satanist, and he does all kinds of things. And anyway, I am having him on the show next Thursday because I don't know anything about Satanist, and I want to know why he became a Satanist and what are the things that he does and what's all involved. So I'm going to post it. You guys can join me if you want to or not, but I'm going to have him on the show because I want to know all about him. I was really curious about him when he came on the Horsefly Chronicles. So that's my guest next week. And then, oh my God, Dave. And then, let's see. Okay, so September. Oh God, that was my last show. Oh, I don't have August. I think. Oh, I don't have my calendar. Oh yeah, so that's for next week. But in September, Dave Spinks, and David Weatherly. I'm not going to tell you the topic. They're coming on the show on September 1st. And I'm really excited about the topic we're going to cover. And then September 8th, Linda Godfrey, we're going to talk about the Dog Man. And she has actually seen the Dog Man. She's very well known in the cryptid community. And she is going to talk about Dog Man. September 15th, my friend Mark Hewitt will be on the show. He is an expert on the Zodiac Killer, the serial killer from San Francisco. And he's an expert on it. He has a periodical that comes out, Radians and Inches, very informative periodical that comes out quarterly. And it's all on the Zodiac Killer. He is extremely informative. He had aired a show with me on serial killers and the psychic of a serial killer. Fascinating show. It's in my archives, and I did an interview with Mark when I was on another network. And since that show does not belong to me, Mark is coming back, and we're going to redo that show on the Zodiac, and it is going to be a series. It's going to be a 3-part series on the Zodiac. Now, the first show in September, because of the heat here, I don't want him coming to the studio because it's just, even though I have air conditioning, it's just way too hot. So the first episode will be September 15th, and then the other 2 episodes will be next year when it's cooler, and he will be in the studio because he really likes coming here. He prefers that. And I have a guest also on September 22nd, Barry Littleton. He is also an alien abductee, and I can't wait to have him on the show. He's got a very, very interesting story. And then on the 29th, Dave is coming back again with me, and we are going to be Dave and Sean Austin will be on the show, and we'll be talking about Sedumsville, which is an extremely evil location. So that's my stuff for September. Everybody, I want to thank you all so much for being here. So let me do some shout outs. Andrew Cox, Starry Night, Donna Gorton, River, Sandra Miller, DPN 808, Janet Wolf, Nancy Soplavita, Para Princess Patricia, Dave Spinks, Real Supernatural, Nicole Jacobs, April Fagan, Chipateria. Who else wants a shout out? Jula. Lully Tooby, Spirit Finder 321, Royce Hinman, My Mod, Coyote S, Elaine Michael. Anybody else want to shout out? Yes, Nancy Suplavita. Good night, everybody. M. Morena, 76, Janice Bolt, Diane Hilbert, B. Singer 11, Miller, Unique Annie, Sweet Annie, one of my mods, Pure Bergalow, Margarita Harvarth, Chris Fry. Anybody else want to shout out? Tommy Roberts, Stephen Curley. Stephen or Stephen? I think it's Stephen. I'm glad you guys all like the show. I was really excited to bring that topic to you on In the Half Light. Gotcha. Lurch M. Gooster, DPN 808, and Tina Yacht. Is that how you pronounce it, Tina Yacht? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Boston and Marina. Thank you. I love you guys. Thank you so much. MS Kruger. Everybody have a wonderful weekend. Be safe. And if you guys ever... Oh, don't forget. Oh, Joseph Avina. Don't forget, you can sign up for Summer Sims. You can sign up for reminders, Paranormal Zone, ParanormalZone.tv, and there's a little tag, a little tag, and you can sign up for the reminders of the shows. Okay, anybody else want to shout out? And don't forget to please subscribe if you haven't done so. Oh, Robert Trains. Oh my God, there you, Robert Trains, he's my techie. Oh my God. Hey Robert, thanks for watching the show. Say hi to Robert Trains. He is, oh my God, I depend on him so much. Hey Robert, he's the one that built my fabulous computer so I can do these shows. Thanks Robert for Say hi to Robert, everybody. Okay, so I see you guys. I see you guys on next Thursday. Aaron Brody. Oh, okay, Aaron. Shout out to Aaron. Anybody else? Yeah, thanks, Andy. Say hi to Robert. He's my techie, guys. Thanks for doing that. Oh my God. Okay, so I guess that's about it. Thank you everybody for saying hi to Robert. I depend on him a lot. All I do is if something goes wrong, I give him a call and boom, he's right there. All right, everybody. So I'm gonna go get something to eat now. It's almost 8 o'clock here. And I'm glad you liked the show. I certainly did. I really enjoyed this topic tonight, and I hope you join me next week. Hope, you're either gonna watch it or not. I can't wait to have him. I think he's gonna be a cool guest. So, okay, I'm gonna say goodnight. I love you guys. Before I sign off, anybody else want a shout out? What's up with Starry? Best of luck to Starry. What's up with Starry? Oh my God, everybody send positive thoughts to Starry. Good luck with your surgery, honey. We'll be thinking of you. All right, everybody, I'm going to say goodnight. I love you guys, and I'll see you all next Thursday, I hope, okay? Group hug. Good night, everybody. Love you. Good night.